Hello everyone and welcome to our demystify finance and operation module wise training series. So in this new episode of our procurement and sourcing module, we will discuss about the purchase order workflow creation process. So as we discussed in our previous episodes of procurement and sourcing module series, we have created multiple purchase order, and whenever we create a purchase order, all the purchase order we see that the status of the purchase order automatically change to approve. That is because we haven't configured any workflow yet. So let me first explain you what is the workflow for a viewer who's beginner to the DXY finance and operation or any ERP system. So in the case of the process where you want to create a purchase order and you want to assign that purchase order to one of your manager, and then your manager go ahead and approve that purchase order. So after this approval, the status of this purchase order will be changed to approve. So if you want such a process or approval process to configure in the purchase order document, then you need to configure the workflow for the purchase order. You can configure the workflow for multiple documents like purchase order, purchase requisition, and so on. In our future videos, we will show you how you can configure the workflow for each document. So make sure you subscribe to our channel for future episode and the latest update. So let me first show you which workflow we are going to configure in the demystify. So this is our workflow which we are creating in this episode. We'll keep this workflow as very simple as this is our first workflow. So I have configured here as if the purchase order belong to some specific vendor. Let's say this vendor have some history of delivering some incorrect product or product with some defect and so on. So whenever I create a purchase order for a specific vendor, then my workflow will be automatically triggered and those purchase order document required approval from the certain user or the manager. So you can see in the flow chart we have created, first is our start node, then we create one process node which is create purchase order. So for the purchase order we have set the condition that if the purchase order is created for the specific vendor, here I take the example of V001, then only workflow will go to the manager for the approval. Otherwise it will automatically approve and will proceed with the confirmation. And even in the manager level, if manager approve that workflow, then you can confirm this workflow for the specific vendor. Otherwise this workflow get terminated and you can't confirm this purchase order. Here in the manager approval we can also set the multiple user, and also we can add the completion policies like for all the managers need to approve or only single manager approval is also okay or not. We will see all the things in this episode, so make sure you watch the complete episode to understand how to create a purchase order from the scratch in demystify finance and operation. So let's move to the demystify system and explore the workflow. So in demystify finance and operation system, to create a workflow, first we navigate to the procurement and sourcing module. Here in the procurement sourcing, let's collapse all. Under the setup we have procurement sourcing workflow, so we'll click on this. So in this form you will see that we have already some workflow under our USMF legal entity. Some are the PR and some are the POs. So PR means purchase requisition workflow. So in this series, after a couple of episodes, we go deeper into the purchase requisition concept. So the purchase requisition workflow isn't normally organization wide workflow. They all shared again all the legal entities. So for that reason we can see some of the workflow available within our USMF legal entity. Also we have some purchase order workflow which is standard workflow provided under USMF legal entity with the Microsoft data. So we are not using this. We will create a new workflow scratch for the purchase order level. Our purchase order is specific to the one legal entity, so that our purchase order workflow is also for only one specific legal entity. So let's create a workflow. In order to create a new workflow, just click on the new. Here I click on the purchase order workflow. So as soon as I click on that link, system will automatically downloading the application for the workflow. The workflow editor will not open in the browser, that will open in the different form or kind of application provided by Microsoft. So as I click on this workflow, system will automatically download that application for you. So now I need to run this. So now I need to authenticate that workflow editor with my credentials. So you need to, after you enter the credential, you need to wait for a couple of minutes to open the purchase order workflow editor. So now it's opening up. This is a workflow editor open with the start node and the below is the our end node. So for now I have configured very simple workflow as we discussed in the initial part of this video. I'll configure this workflow for the vendor level. So whenever the purchase order will be initiated, and if the purchase order is belong to some specific vendor, then my workflow will be automatically trigger, and those purchase order require the approval from the manager. So I need to configure the same work. So let's see how we do this. First is a conditional division and manual division. As our workflow is very simple, we are not discussing about the conditional division and the manual division. All will be discussed about this in our upcoming episode. So let's pull the first approval node in the workflow pan. You just need to click on this approval purchase order and just drag and drop in the workflow pan. So as soon as you drop this workflow, you will see that we have lot of error in the pan because we have not connected the nodes yet. So just now I just click on this yellow pan and I'm going to click on this properties button. Here you have the properties button. So in the properties we have first basic setting where you find the name, purchase order, workflow. So we are not changing any name for the now. Second is the owner. This is very important field because there are various conditions where the workflow will be triggered from owner of the workflow. So the owner of the workflow will be always be triggered from the particular field or more than this. So I'll cover this shortly. We will discuss deeper into this particular workflow. So let me type some first submission instruction for now. So whatever you enter in the submission instruction, you will get the notification for this same node. So I'll enter please approve my purchase order number. Here you can also specify the PO number, which is dynamically populated by using insert place order. Here we have the insert place order button. So I just click on this, search for the PO number field in the label. So here we have the label of purchase order. So I just click on this label. So our place order is inserted now. So as we select the place order here, so our purchase order number will be dynamically auto populated in my notification. So for the below option activation, notification and nodes, we don't want to worry about this for now. I just close this one. Now we need to connect this node. So I just select here, drag this line here, and for the approval, I do same with the end node. Okay. So now you can see that as soon as I join this node, our error was automatically disappears. So now I set the condition for this. To set the condition, I just need to double click on the approval node. This is our step 1 where I am defining the condition of validate this purchase order is created for the specific vendor or not. So I just right click on this, click on the properties. Here in the basic setting you can change the step name also in the workflow item subject. So in the first also I am giving the same notification. You need to mindful for this about because work item subject or work item instruction is a part of your notification that sent to the approval. So I write here as a purchase order approval, and in the work item instruction I'll enter the please approve the purchase order number. I again set the placeholder. Here I need to select the purchase order number. So I again select the purchase order, double click on this. I set the same instruction name over here. You can change the instruction as per your requirement. Now the second option is the assignment. In the assignment tab you have seen the different option here. As you select any option, you can see that all the other options is also changed. You will get a different functionality for the each node. So let's first start with the user. User means I choose the user here. I'll click on I select the user, and in the user level you can find the list of all the user. So in the user list here I select who is my approval. User who is approve my purchase order if my purchase order is have. So here I am adding my name as a manager. So this will send back to me for the approval. So I select the admin. This one I have entered. Here you can also choose the multiple user. Let me add the multiple user. I need to show one more functionality. So for this I'm adding multiple user. So in the next tab we have something like time limit. After user we have time limit. if you want your workflow to be with the approval of 5 to 6 days, so here you can define the working calendar including Saturdays or Sundays are working or not. So for now I selected as a week. So after 1 week this workflow will be not working. You can also set the escalation policies if there is no action taken for your workflow after a week. So for now, next is our very important tab is completion policy. So currently here we have a 4 approvals we have added in the user level. Here in the user you can see that we have added 4 approvals. Then you can set here that you want to approve your workflow to make sure the purchase order goes to the next step, or you just want a single approval. So if you want one of them to approve this, then the purchase order goes to next step, then you can set the single approver. The second one is a majority approval. Majority approval means, for example, in the user list you have the 5 user added for the approval and you set the completion policy as a majority of approval. So if your 3 user approve this workflow, then your workflow will be goes to the next step with the majority of approval. Third one is a percentage of approval. In the percentage of approval you can set the, let's say I have set the percentage as a 50%, and the user we have 4 approvals. So as per the compilation policy, if your 2 user approve this workflow, then this workflow will be automatically goes to the next step. And the last one is all approval. All approval, as the name says, all the approval, all the 4 approvals we have set in the user list needs to approve this workflow. So for now I just entered as a single approval for our new workflow. So for now I just again go to our last, so our done with our user tab. We have multiple options, so let's check all the other option one by one. So first one is a participant. Participant means, so if I select the participant, my option was change. First is a role. So first one is a role based. I have set role based as a security role participant. So we have security role participant tab, which means that if I select the role based security tab, then system will show the available security tab within the system. So here you can see that in the participant level you will see all the available role in the system. So for example, if I set here in the participant as a system admin, then this workflow will be assigned to all the user which have the role of the system admin. So let me give you a quick overview about the user role option in the system admin for our subscriber who is a beginner in the demystify. If you know about the user role, you can skip that part and move to the next part. So for security, I'll again go to demystify and quickly show you what is the role base. So for role base you need to go to system admin. In the system admin we have user option. Under the user, so here you can see that the user list, here every user assigned with a role. So let's take an example of our admin. Okay, so here you can see that this user have the system admin role. So according to our workflow setup which we see in the role based, so this user will get the notification for the approval as this user is a part of now workflow approval process. We have the other options, like first one is a security role based, and the next one is a user based role participant. Here you see all the user group which are available within a system, test group 1, test group 2. So let me also show you where you can find this user role group option. Let's again go to back user option. Here in the users we have user groups. So if you go into the user group, here you can see that you can create a new user group and assign this user group in the particular group over here. So the user group option is done. Here you can also set the time limit for week, days, and the next one is a completion policy. Here in the completion policy, if you set all approval, which means that all the users inside the user groups need to approve this workflow to move for the next step. Otherwise you can set also single approvals. So one user inside the user group approve this workflow to move for the next step. So we again go to back or done with our participant. Here we have the hierarchy option. In the hierarchy option we have hierarchy selection. Inside hierarchy selection, in the finance and operation there are 2 hierarchy. One is a organizational hierarchy and one is a managerial hierarchy. Here we have the manager hierarchy, means that let's say you add the self as a employee in the system. You are reporting to your manager and your manager reporting to the senior manager, and then it will be reported to the director, and you will have an manager hierarchy. So if you are originator of the workflow, then manager hierarchy will go to the manager. So if you want such workflow to be configured, you need to set the user option as a manager hierarchy. So and in the start from, you can set it as a orderer, requester, or workflow originator and workflow owner. So what is an orderer in the purchase order? Sometimes you are the orderer, means you are the purchase clerk and raising the purchase order, but requester are someone else. So if you are raising the purchase order, so it's not means that it will go to the your manager, it means it's go to your the requester manager or the supervisor for the approval. So let me show you in the purchase order, which I'm talking about the order and the requester. Again go to procurement and sourcing. In the purchase order, all purchase order, so let me click on the new. Here in the administration tab, you can see that the orderer and the requester. So Julia is our order in our case, and the requester we can set the any requester. So let me add the requester name. So let's take an Ted as our requester. So I select the Ted in the purchase order. So here in my case, the Julia is a orderer and the requester is a Ted. So the workflow for the particular purchase order should not go to my supervisor, who is Julie. It should go to the Ted supervisor for the approval. So in that case, you must be mindful for the choosing the requester and the orderer option here. So that is about the hierarchy selection option. So now let's move to the workflow user. This is very simple. If I select the workflow user option here we have the option of workflow originator, work item owner or workflow owner. If I select the workflow user, then it will send the approval to yourself. If you choose the workflow originator, because we are the originating that workflow, this will be go to yourself for the approval. So that's it about the workflow user. The time limit and the compilation policy is same as others. So the next one is user. We have already talked about the user. We are using currently the user option, so I'm removing the other user because we are choosing the admin as an option, time limit as a 1 week, and the compilation policy as a single approval. So this workflow will be automatically notify us for the workflow approval. So I just close this one. So this is step 1. We again, so let me add the condition for my workflow. I'll again go to properties. I forgot to add the condition, so I'm done with the assignment basic setting. Now I'll go to conditions. So run with this step. When the following condition is met, you need to select the second option. In the second option, I'll add the condition for purchase order. Here I say the vendor. Okay. So I set the condition where the purchase account number, I set the value. So here I select the 001 as we discussed in our initial part of the video. I set it as a first vendor. So we add the condition that purchase order dot vendor account. If our vendor account in the purchase order is contains this 0001 number, then you need to go for the your manager approval. So we are done with our condition. I just close this. Now we'll again review. First we done with our basic setting. In the basic setting we set the notification for our workflow. In the assignment we set the assignment who is approving our workflow. So we set it as a user option and we set user ID as a workflow approval, and in the condition we set it as a purchase order where if the vendor account is 001, then this workflow will be triggered and go to the approval for ourselves. I just close this, then go to one step up. So there is no error in the workflow, so I just click on the save and close button. Here I set the version as a 1. Click on OK. So here your system asks you, do you want to activate the workflow? Currently we are not activating the workflow. I'll show you how you can activate from outside, because sometimes you have multiple workflows, so I don't want to confuse them with this. So currently I have selected do not activate the new version. I'll click on the OK. So this will take some time to close this workflow. Okay, now our workflow is closed. We again go to our purchase order workflow. So here you can see that our new purchase order workflow is created, but it's not in the default stage. If you have multiple workflow, then you need to select the workflow or set it as a default option. If you don't have any workflow in the system and you're creating the new workflow, then system will automatically consider this new workflow as a default workflow. So I set it as a default. I just click on the default option. So this, you can see that our toggle is enabled for this default option for our workflow. So let's activate our workflow. To activate workflow, you just click on this version button. Here you can see that you find all the versions, because you can edit this workflow any number of times. Whenever you edit the workflow or make any changes in the workflow, system will create a new version. So you can accordingly activate any versions which you want. So I just click on this button and click on this make active button. Here you have the other option also, like import, export. You can import that workflow or export any workflow. For example, you export this workflow and you can import the same workflow for different legal entity. Close this workflow. So now our workflow is set it as a default workflow and it's also activated now. So this is how we create a workflow in Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance and Operation. So that is not done yet. We have one more setup to be done for use the workflow. So I'll again go to procurement and sourcing. Under the parameter, you have the option of active chain management in the global level, and also to enable this allow override setting. So these two toggle we need to enable. So let's test our workflow now. We again go to procurement and sourcing all purchase order. In the first testing, I am not creating the purchase order for the specific vendor which we added in the condition, because we are checking that our workflow will affecting other vendors or not. So let me first create a new, select any other random vendor. Here you can see that our workflow option will be enabled because we have configured the workflow. Previously this workflow option is not there. So I have selected any random vendor first. Select any warehouse and site for time being. Let me add the item number. So I just save this. So here now we need to submit this workflow. Here you can see that our notification will be properly please approve my work order, purchase order, and the purchase order number 00251 is dynamically populated based on place order. So as per our condition, we are not set any workflow for this vendor, so system needs to be automatically approve this workflow. So we just set, click on the submit button. So our workflow is submitted now. The workflow approval process, I just need to submit. Here you can mention the comment. So I just submit this. So the approval process is the batch job process. So you can set the recurrence for this batch job like 10 seconds, 1 minute as per your requirement. I will show you how you can set the recurrence for this batch job in our next episode. So for now we have done with this workflow. You can also check the workflow history. So to check the status of your workflow, I just click on this workflow history button. I refresh this. So first it's submitted by Julie, which is our username. So it's take time to submit. So it's approval. So here you can see that our condition step 1 is automatically false, because this purchase order is not created for the vendor which we have set in the workflow level. So our purchase order will be automatically approved. Let's go back and check the status of our workflow. Let's refresh this. So here you can see that our status of the purchase order will be changed from in draft to the approved state. So that's it for this video. In our next episode, I'll show you the creating the purchase order for the vendor which we have added in the workflow. I'll also show you some feature of the workflow. So make sure you watch the next episode of the purchase order workflow. And stay tuned with us, and thank you for watching.